This is Tandega Dlamini today on the 18th day of July 2025 in Mbabane, Swatini, conducting an interview for the Global Oral History of PEPFAR in Eswatini. So thank you so much, Mr. Magongo, for giving us your time. So to begin with, could you please start off by introducing yourself? As you introduce yourself, briefly tell us about yourself and your family, where you're born, where do you go to school, etc.
Okay. I am Khulekani Magongo. I work at Young Heroes as the executive director currently. I come from the Lubombo region of Eswatini. My home area is Tikuba, up on the Lubombo Plateau. I was born there, and due to education needs and other factors, I moved to Manzini, where I did most of my formal education, especially the high school. And I've been living in Manzini and also visiting home as frequent as possible since then.
Thank you so much. Could you just tell us, in terms of training, tertiary, what you were trained in before you were working for Young Heroes?
All right. I was trained at the University of Eswatini. First, I did my BA in humanities there, and then I did a postgraduate certificate in education. And then I went on further to attend courses under the PEPFAR Center of the Columbia University in the US, where I did studies on organization management, non-profit organization management.
Thank you. So after you were done with your tertiary education, your career started, right? So can you please tell me how your career started after you graduated up until you started with Young Heroes? Then we'll take it on from Young Heroes onwards.
All right. So I finished my BA in the year 2000, and yes, in the year 2000. And in 2001, I started teaching at the Zombotse National High School. Before then, while I was at the university, I was involved in community development projects in the country, where we worked with the University of Pretoria to do several projects, including putting up a rural water scheme, doing renovations for primary schools, and also rescuing food distribution actually for flood victims in Mozambique in 1998. We did that. We were funded by the University of Pretoria, and locally we worked with micro projects. And then after 2 years of teaching, I then applied for a job at micro projects, where I worked as a regional project officer, doing mostly community development works such as rural electrification, construction of classrooms in schools, and earth dams, and many other projects. I worked and I was responsible for the Lubombo region.
Okay. So when you were working prior to your tenure at Young Heroes, how did you come to work on HIV issues in the country?
Yeah, so while I was working, I think from my teaching experience, I had the passion to work with children from there. And when I applied for the microprojects work, it had to do more with the opportunity to help and see our communities being developed. And then while I was working at micro projects, again, another opportunity surfaced, which was the opportunity to work directly again with children. And I jumped to that opportunity when I learned that Nature had advertised for a position for someone who was going to design and implement a project or a program to support children in Eswatini.
Okay. So you get a position with Nature to work with children and HIV issues in the country. What was the state of HIV generally in the country when you started working on HIV, especially on your Young Heroes First position?
Yeah, so back then, that was 2005 when I was actually recruited. And I started working with Nature in January of 2006. Back then, we had very, I would say, harsh experiences in terms of seeing a number of people dying due to HIV or AIDS related illnesses. During that time, really, we were seeing large numbers of the parents dying and leaving their children. And the reason why actually there was a thought to say, how do we help those children who then remain without their mother and father? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we started Young Heroes, actually, the name was coined from the concept where the then director of Nature, Derek von Wissel, had someone who was helping children in the country, and by the name of Hilda Emerua, who would sit down with her kids and make Christmas cards, sell those, and then donate the money to Nature. And then to benefit children. And then the idea of having children in the developed countries helping their peers in Eswatini developed at that time to say, how can we have a system that would ensure that this continues and we get more people to support our children.
Okay, interesting, because now we are moving a bit forward into like how Young Heroes started in Swaziland. In Eswatini, I keep saying Swaziland, but still was Swaziland. Yeah. Okay, so what was the state of government involvement as you saw it back then? You know, when you started with with the HIV in Nature, what was the role that government was playing around these issues?
Yeah, in the early years of working with Nature, it is then actually that I got to understand how the country was dealing with HIV. And so many studies were being done and in the country to know how, as a country, we respond to the scourge of HIV. As I said, there were many deaths at that time, and children were remaining behind. And when we started working as Young Heroes, we actually said we are going to support orphans being those children who have lost both parents, because there were so many of those. There is a tradition in Siswati to say when children are left behind, then an adult within the larger family can be appointed to go and stay with the children to look after them and support them. But during that time, there were very few of those adults who could be sent to take care of the children. So you'd find many of the families being child-headed, and we then intervened to say, who then makes sure that they have food each day? So our first intervention was, let us ensure that we keep them alive by making sure there is food on the table. So we started with the cash grants, which we would get from individuals, companies, local and abroad, who would donate on a monthly basis, and then would send those funds to the families. In most cases, it would be a grandmother who is taking care of the children who would receive the funds and buy the food on their behalf. And then in some cases, you'd find that the eldest child who has the responsibility to look after his or her peers would receive the funds and buy the food.
Okay. Okay, so I see that you have been involved with Young Heroes right from the beginning. Is that correct?
Yes.
You have tried to tell me a little bit of the history of Young Heroes, that it started from some lady who was doing Christmas card, and then it grew up to be what it is today. So I know that you have been working with Nature, Peace Corps, and other partners. Can you just explain the role of these different organizations during the formation stages of Young Heroes and how they've contributed thus far?
Yeah, so in the year 2005, Nature asked a Peace Corps volunteer who was working in the country, Steve Kelleher, to design and come up with a way in which people overseas can donate to support children in Swaziland. Then we started working, I started working with Steve in 2006, and we launched in February 2006. Most of the systems to get money donated in the US through credit cards and all that had been designed by Steve Kelleher. And then we then started working with the Peace Corps volunteers in the country who would enroll the children in their communities. Because the Peace Corps volunteers would stay in the communities in Eswatini, and they would know who amongst the families needed help. So we worked with the Peace Corps volunteers in the first few years of the project, and then there were problems when they left the country, and then there were gaps as to who then continues to take care of the beneficiaries of Young Heroes. We would then look into local people who would continue to do the work in the communities. So besides the enrolling children into the program, the Peace Corps volunteers also helped us in spreading the word, talking about what Young Heroes does, and getting people to support our initiatives. They also have a group of Peace Corps volunteers who have returned to the US called the Friends of Swaziland, and those continue to support us even today.
I see. Okay, so when you were offered this position, I know that you were working with children during your university days, and you're exposed to the plight of children, plus also you're a teacher. That just meant that you have a passion for children. So when you're starting off and taking up this position, what were you hoping to contribute when you took up the position? So we're talking about why you took the position and what we are hoping to achieve.
Yeah, I do recall when I looked at the advert, I was still working for micro projects. And at that time, we and at that time, I think I was really doing well, even within micro projects. But when I looked at the advert, I realized that it was a position which would eventually grow, and it would depend on how I want to design systems or programs or interventions for children in the country. So the scope was really wide, and I liked that because it really it has become what it looked like, to say I had the liberty to design interventions and to address the needs of the children in the country.
Okay. So for somebody who doesn't know what Young Heroes is, can you just briefly explain what it is and the mandate or the vision for the organization?
All right. So Young Heroes is a local organization in Eswatini. It is registered under the laws of the country. We are a non-profit making entity. We are a non-governmental organization. Our mission is to empower children and the youth. The aim is to bring them into self-sufficient adults who we want, as Young Heroes, our vision is to create a safe haven for children and the youth in the country. We work primarily with children, and we see them through into their youthful ages. And we also work with the adults in support of the children. So our interventions with the adults or caregivers, parents and caregivers, are mainly also to support the children. So our main work actually is with the children and the youth in the country.
So tell us about setting up Young Heroes, because you are saying that one of the things that was an incentive for you when you saw the position was the opportunity for you to start something from scratch, designing systems and programs. Can you just elaborate to me, like, where you started from to set up this organization to what it is today?
All right. So when I started in January 2006, we were putting up the systems locally to say, when we get the money deposited into our account, how do we get it to the beneficiaries? So we met with SPTC, which is the Swaziland Post and Telecommunications Company, where we made a partnership that we would send the money to the children through the post offices. So because the post offices had a large number of offices in the country spread throughout the regions, we wanted the caregivers or the beneficiaries to be as close as possible to where they can get the money. So we started working with the post offices, and then we moved to mobile money, which is the MTN platform where we can send money to a cell phone. And then after setting that up, we had already set up the systems to get money transferred from PayPal. So our website had an ability to capture payments, and then people would be directed to a PayPal platform where they could then set up either a once-off payment or a monthly subscription. And then once we get that information, it would be registered into our database, which we would then use to allocate the funds to a certain family, depending on how much we received. Back then, we started with $19.95 a month per child, and we currently do give $20 per child per month, which is enough to provide basic food for a month for a child. And if there are 2 children, then they get double the amount. And then we then would transfer the money from PayPal to a bank in America, which is set up by the Young Heroes Foundation, which I will tell you more about. And then from there, the funds would be then transferred to a bank in Eswatini. I do recall the very first transfer that we did. When we received the money at FNB in our bank, I looked at Steve and said, "Okay, we have the money now. So what?" So we didn't have, we had not planned as to how do we track the funds as to what amounts must be paid to each family, because we have received so much from their donors. So I quickly designed that on Excel to say then we can track and link the families with a payment that has been made on PayPal. And then I worked with Steve for a year. And then when he left, my immediate response to say I needed more support to see those activities or to manage. And the first person that I hired was someone with an accounting background, so that she could work on the finances and ensure that we are paying the right people and the right amounts.
Interesting. So I see that there was somebody who was a founder who played a key role in setting up of Young Heroes. Is Steve still involved to this date? And if so, how? You also spoke about a foundation in the US. How those people have been involved since the beginning up to now, if they still are?
Okay. For Young Heroes to get the funds donated in the US, there had to be an entity in the US that would collect the funds and send them over to Swaziland. So Steve set up the Young Heroes Foundation in the US, which is a separate entity from Young Heroes Eswatini. It has its own board members in the US, and it is a 501c3 entity there. So what it does is they collect donations from individuals, foundations, companies, and then support the initiatives of Young Heroes Eswatini. Steve is not directly involved, but he's a board member in the US now of the Young Heroes Foundation. And we do write reports to give them reports and updates on what they are supporting as the Young Heroes Foundation. So they also do support other initiatives which may not be done by Young Heroes in the country. But primarily they were set up to support Young Heroes Eswatini.
So I have read, because we have to do some extensive research of all the different organizations that we target to talk to. So I know that around 2014, Young Heroes became independently registered NGO. Can you explain to us why that happened and how did that happen?
Yeah. So, as the main task that nature gave Young Heroes was to mobilize resources. And nature would underwrite our operations up to 1.5 million emalangeni, and we are expected to raise the same amount. And in many of the years ever since, actually, we have more than doubled that amount. So the idea was that nature would underwrite the operations of Young Heroes so that 100% of the donations would go towards our beneficiaries. Over the years, and we have grown. I think we started with a budget of about 600,000 malangeni in 2006, and that amount kept on growing each year as we were mobilizing, as I said, more than double the amount each year. And then at some point, I came across foundations who would want to support Young Heroes, one of which was the Global Fund for Children. And when they wanted to provide the support, and they would then inquire as to what is the legal status of Young Heroes. And because back then we were a department under nature, we were considered as a government entity, because nature is a government entity established by the law in Eswatini. And then I felt that we were losing, and I saw that we were losing a number of opportunities because we were a government entity under nature. So I spoke to the board. Fortunately, when nature established Young Heroes, they also established a separate board that would govern the operations of Young Heroes. So with nature, I would only mainly do the financial reporting and programmatic reporting to show what we were doing with their money. And then the board would look into the governance of Young Heroes. That was since 2007. The first board actually had the current Deputy Prime Minister's office, Deputy Prime Minister Thuli Lala, as a board member, and the chairperson was Pastor Ken Jefferson, who is now back in the UK. Then I moved to have Young Heroes registered as a separate entity. That idea was there from the onset. Upon creation of Young Heroes, there was the idea that Young Heroes should grow to a standalone entity and to support children in the whole country. That's why even when we started working, I do recall we started with about 300 beneficiaries, and they were spread throughout the whole country. And at some point we felt it was cumbersome following up on some of these children, because you'd find that one family is up there at the northern part of the country, and another family is down at Lavumesa, which is the furthest southern part of the country. And then we thought, as the program under nature, as Young Heroes grew, we thought, let us look into how do we then get more funds. I moved to the board to say we could actually double our income back then in 2013, and then I The first time the move was rejected, and I came back again at the second time I had lost about 5 million emalangeni, which I could have gotten, but because we were perceived to be a government entity, we could not. And then I did report that to the board and made a case to have Young Heroes registered as a separate entity. And that was approved, and we eventually registered in July of 2014. From there, we then had the liberty to present Young Heroes as we had the liberty to present Young Heroes as an autonomous NGO in the country. And then because we had now established the systems and the programs in the country, maybe to go back a bit, we started off giving funds for food and clothing on a monthly basis. That was it. And then in 2007, we realized that there was a need to look into the health needs of the children. Why? Because at some point I found a child, I think she was about 15 years old at that time, in the Shiseloni region, who had not gone to school because she was sick. She had a headache. And when I asked, I think it was a Tuesday, and then the Monday she had not gone to school, and then on Tuesday she had not gone to school. She was supported by a rural health motivator who lived nearby. And then when I asked, why don't you go to the clinic then? She said, I'm waiting for my Young Heroes money so that I can pay at the clinic. And the money was to come in about 2 weeks' time. So I went back and said, if we want to keep the children alive, then we must have interventions that attend to their health needs. So I started talking to the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation, and in 2009 we formed a partnership with PEPFAR and Baylor, where we would have a doctor from Baylor go and do a health, we call them health sessions, where we would invite all our beneficiaries to the nearest health facility. And there they would be seen by a nurse, and then the nurse would recommend those who needed to be seen by a doctor, and then they would bring in the doctor from Baylor, who would then write prescriptions and would get the medication there and there. And if the medication was not available in the health facility, we would provide the funds for the children and the caregivers to buy the meds at the nearest pharmacy. So in 2007 and 2009, actually, we started working with Baylor and ECPAF for our healthcare initiatives. At the same time, we partnered with Serious Fun Children's Network, which is a US-based organization that provides support to children with terminal illnesses. We use their programming standards, and we localized those and came up with a curriculum for children and adolescents living with HIV in the country. So we then started doing camps under the banner of Serious Fun in 2009. And then we went further in 2013 to look into them now graduating out of Young Heroes. The saddest thing was that back then, because we were registered as an organization that is supporting children, So when they turned 18, then that is up to the age of 18. And after that, we would have to cut the sponsorship. And it was so sad in most instances where I would have to cut the sponsorship, yet the child, I would say, is still in school. So some of our beneficiaries would turn 19 while they are still doing Form 3 or Form 4, and sometimes Form 5. So I went back to the board to say, let us look into supporting children and the youth. So we then involved the youth, and they became our beneficiaries in 2013. So we then started supporting them with what we came up with a skills training empowerment program, which we call STEP. STEP was meant for those children who have faced difficulties completing school, or those who have completed school but they could not further their studies or enroll into tertiaries. So through STEP, we enrolled them into local training centers where they could be trained on trades such as motor mechanic, electrical wiring, plumbing, metalwork, carpentry, and other trades. So we work with the training centers. We partnered with the training centers in the country to say we will bring them a list of children who they must take and train each year. Unlike the other enrollees in the institutions, ours would be given preference, and they would be enrolled because of that partnership that we had with the training institutions. So the programs of Young Heroes became larger and larger over the years, such that when we registered in 2014, and then we could speak about Young Heroes as a separate organization. We then started working with PEPFAR in 2015. We could not work with them before then because of our legal standing in the country. But after the registration in 2014, we were then able to start to work with PEPFAR in 2015 under the Umliba Lawyer Mbili project. The best part about that partnership was that it was the first encounter for Young Heroes to implement activities or initiatives or programs funded by PEPFAR. That was our first encounter to be directly involved in the implementation of PEPFAR funded activities. And the best part about the PEPFAR partnership in 2015 was that it came with capacity development for the organization. So we looked at the policies for Young Heroes back then, and there were so many gaps. So we developed several policies, such as the finance management manual, HR policies, procurement policies. Those were the major ones that we were the first that we did. So because we had just transitioned out of nature, and we could no longer leverage on the systems of nature in 2015, so we needed to develop ours, and PEPFAR helped us to come up with those through their institutional strengthening plan. which as young heroes we diligently put effort towards ensuring that we do the activities and attend to the shortcomings that are listed in the findings. So we started as an in-kind partner where we would implement, but all the payments and everything was managed by PEPFAR. But then we graduated in 2016 to be I would say a sub that has full control of its activities. We continued with the institutional strengthening plan under PEPFAR, identifying areas of improvement and attending to those, such that Young Heroes became one of the best performing organizations for PEPFAR. And we applied for another grant under PEPFAR, which was a follow-on to the Umlibalaya Mbili, where it was called the Insiga Yakusasa project. And with that project, we were able to actually surpass a number. I would say we became the best performing organization in the project, such that we were earmarked for transition. Now, I learned of the transition in 2019 when I attended a USAID PEPFAR meeting in South Africa, where I learned about the localization agenda, that PEPFAR was looking into more engagement with the local entities and finding local solutions in its work. And from there, Young Heroes positioned herself to be one of those entities that could be transitioned into a prime in Eswatini.
Okay, I do have some follow-up questions because I want to be very systematic with my questions when Young Heroes now started to become a sub-recipient or prime for PEPFAR funds, because that's the gist of the interview. The rest we're just making way for how we arrived to where we are. I do want to clarify, you spoke about funding starting at 100K in 2006 when you started. And then 2014 was a turning point in terms of the history of the organization, whereby you transitioned from being a baby to nurture. Now you became your own entity, which was autonomous. So by the time you transitioned in 2014, because we were saying the funding was doubling like every year and you're surpassing the 1.5 million every year. At what level was your funding by the time you wanted to transition in 2014?
Well, maybe I would have to check the books for accurate numbers, but I think back then it was around 4 million Malangeni that we would get into Young Heroes. And then when we started working with PEPFAR, then it grew to 8 million Malangeni. And from there on, it has been growing. I do recall it grew to 12 million and so on, up until this year, it's about 140 million Malangeni.
Okay. You also mentioned that your first attempt to disengage from nature was thwarted. I'm just interested to know that what were the reasons for the board not to approve Young Heroes to be an independent entity?
Yeah, so the first attempt to get Young Heroes registered as a separate entity from nature was not successful because there were risks associated with that. The board mainly it feared that if we register as a separate entity, then we risked losing funding from nature. That was the main gist, and at that time I could not present good enough figures to say what would come in would actually be way more than what we were getting from nature. So it was up until I came up with very large numbers like 5 million emalangeni to say I've lost this funding because we are not a registered entity. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Another issue I wanted clarity on. You really are an example of an entity or organization that started from zero to hero. So you say that you started with 300 children that were your beneficiaries and they were spread across the country. I mean, how did you identify these children? Can you just explain that strategy, how all of these children were identified across the country?
Yeah, mainly when we started, we were enrolling the children through the Peace Corps volunteers in the country. So we supported children in communities where we had a Peace Corps volunteer. That is how we started. And then over time, we engaged the local leadership to appoint someone who would work with us to coordinate our activities.
That's the secret sauce I was looking for. Thank you. You know, the effectiveness of relationships and collaboration within the community to make community development work. Okay, so now I know that you have spoken about how you got into PEPFAR funds through PACT. So explain to me, did PACT have a request for proposal? Was it a call for what? I mean, how did you get to know about that opportunity to even work, to apply? Did you apply? Were you headhunted? How did you know about that opportunity? Explain to me.
I think the first contact was through references, where we were referred to PACT. I don't recall now whether by the entities or the organizations we were working with, such as PEPFAR. And then we actually had a meeting with PACT where we shared what we do as Young Heroes, and they loved our interventions. And that is how we started working with PACT. That is for the first grant, which was under the Umlibalo ya Embili.
How much was that, if I may ask?
We were the funding actually was always bigger than what we had signed for. So it was, I think the start was about 5 million emalangeni when we started.
That's per annum of the duration of the project?
Per annum.
Okay.
Per annum, yes. And then, yeah, and as I said, we would sign off on an amount, but what we would actually use or get from PACT would be more than what we have signed for.
Explain how did that work, because when you sign an MOU or an agreement, it's usually capped to say you can only use so much. So if you say you had the liberty to spend more than what was approved, explain to me, how did that happen?
Yeah, so it wasn't actually a liberty to use more than what is approved.
Okay.
But it was a liberty to use what is available.
Like changing line items, as long as you're within the overall budget.
So PACT had their budget with USAID in US dollars. And the forex gains because we would sign our grant agreement with PACT in Emalangeni, And because of the forex gains, there would always be more money that was made available to us.
Got it.
Yeah, and
Got it.
yeah, yeah, and they would sign off through incremental funding, or what they called modifications, which would then obligate more funding to us.
Okay, so you've been going on about Mliba being the first project that you were able to have your first stint with PEPFAR funds. What was Mliba? If you can explain to somebody, what was that project all about?
Yeah, the Umliba Loya Mbili actually is a Siswati phrase that speaks to children being the future. So the main interventions were around HIV prevention and support for orphan and vulnerable children. Under HIV prevention, we would use approved PEPFAR approved curriculums for HIV prevention. We would run sessions in the communities which were led by the peers of the children, and then we would monitor those. And then we also had, we promoted participation of the children at all levels, such that even in the design of the interventions, we had what we called the YAB, Youth Advisory Board, which would participate in our planning meetings. And then the OVC component had to do with education support, protection from harm, including protection from violence or GBV. Then it also had positive parenting skills, which would conduct with the children and the caregivers. And then there was economic strengthening component, where we engaged with the caregivers through making savings and lending groups, so that they could continue to support the children beyond the life of the project.
Okay. How many beneficiaries were those?
When we started, I think we had about 3,000 beneficiaries under PECT, and then we were in a few Tingondla. If I recall, it was Mochane and Vonjeni and Mhlangatane. And then because we were doing very well as an implementing partner, we had our Tingondla increased at some point to 5. When we applied to after the first project under PECT, Umliba Loya Mbili, we had the second, a follow-on. It was a call, which we wrote a proposal, and we indicated what we wanted to do, and it was approved by PECT, and we were assigned 3 Tingondla. Again, we started with the 3 because we were already working in those Tingondla. The criteria, I do recall, it was only 2 Tingondla. An organization could only implement in 2 Tingondla, but we applied for the 3, and we were allowed to continue the work that we had been doing in the previous project. And then we learned of the DREAMS project, which then increased our scope in terms of the geographical coverage in the country. to 5 Tengundla with an addition of Pig's Peak and yes, and Pig's Peak and Mhlangatane. Mhlangatane was not at Dreams in Ngundla back then, but we did made a case. We made a case for Mhlangatane to be added as a Dreams in Ngundla, and that was successfully done.
Okay. So it looks like it was an organic type of relationship you had with PACT, because you just had a door open for you to do umliba, and then thereafter you were responding to the different other interventions that PACT was having, obviously because of your ability to deliver, and exceptionally so that you could be able to get the support that you needed. Let's talk about how did you work with PACT as being a sub-recipient? What was their role in this kind of working relationship with them? What kind of support did you get from them and all of that?
Yeah, our work with PACT has evolved to also showing how Young Heroes has grown. We started off as an in-kind partner where PACT would literally do payments on our behalf. We would do all the activities for procurement. We would do source quotations and do the justification for selection and all that, and then we would ask PACT to make the payments for us. And then we transitioned to a fully fledged implementing partner under PACT in 2017, where then we had the liberty to use our systems internally as Young Heroes and processes to process payments and to manage the funds that we received. Sorry. Yeah, so we became a fully fledged sub in 2017, and then we attended to the capacity development initiatives or issues that were found to be lacking at Young Heroes. We worked with PACT to attend to those. So we had what we call an institution strengthening plan, ISP, which PACT would follow on a quarterly basis to see what issues we have addressed. And they would meet with the board once a year, where they would brief them to say what is it that they were doing with us, and if there were issues that needed board attention, such as the composition of the board, we would look into who sits in the board and why. And then we attended to those issues up until, I would say, in 2018 we were a very good performing entity under PACT, such that even our systems, our policies, because before then we only had them on paper. Then the second stage was to transition now to implement the policies that we had just written. So those were tested, and to the extent that in 2019 actually we were able to demonstrate that we fully implemented our policies.
So what would you say is one of the takeaway messages or learnings that you had, PACT being your example as a prime, during that process when you were sub-recipient? What was it that you were able to learn? What is it they did well, that made you to thrive to get to the level at which they were at?
Yeah. I think the lesson that we took from working with PECT was that you really need to be committed into what you want to be. It required a lot of work, and at some point we could feel that it was too much for us, but we put in the effort, and it was really a hectic exercise to do the assessments with PECT, and then to go through each and everything that we do, whether we're doing it right or not. It was very hectic. For us, I think we had the right attitude. We wanted to grow, and we wanted to address the shortcomings that had been identified.
I see. So you mentioned that in one of your meetings in South Africa, PEPFAR allayed the information that there was this localization agenda. Can you just explain to us that what exactly did they say this was, and what were the intentions of it, and what kind of inspiration did it give you to hear that kind of direction that PEPFAR was anticipating?
So we were invited to a local partners meeting in South Africa in 2019. The local partners meeting is only for local organizations. I think that's the main reason why we took part in that meeting. I do recall Young Heroes and World Vision attended that meeting in 2019. And then in that meeting, it was an eye-opener for me in many ways. For instance, we would do many things with PECT, and we did not understand why, but we would see the reasons, and we would think and know to say, well, we are doing for instance, a routine data quality assessment. We'd do it now and then, and there wasn't a connection as to the bigger picture as to how does it contribute to the overall performance of the project. And then we would do the reporting, financial reporting. We would do the programmatic reporting, and many things that were designed and approved by PEPFAR. And when I went into the meeting in 2019, I then put into perspective that it was not only us who were doing those. So many, actually, almost all the partners were funded by PEPFAR through USAID were doing the same thing. So we learned that it is a necessity. Everything that we did was necessary. And then we learned about the importance around financial management. We learned about the Yellow Book audit, and then I learned about the localization agenda. And there were presentations from other countries indicating or telling us about their journey into becoming a USAID Prime. I do recall we would have roundtable discussions with those organizations in other countries who have transitioned, and we were asking questions, how did they attend? For instance, one of the key questions was, in terms of capacity, did you continue with the team that you had when you were a sub? And we learned that you really needed to bring in people with the right expertise, skills, to to do program management. You needed skills for your financial management and all that. So we learned of the strategies and what they did to address those gaps. One of which was, for instance, they recruited staff from the INGOs that were implementing as primes, which which I implemented when I became a prime. When Young Heroes became a prime, we opened the doors for people from INGOs to come and work at Young Heroes, and we indicated what skills that we required. Yeah.
Understood. Very good lesson learned. That worked for you.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Yeah. So now let's move into Young Heroes becoming a prime for PEPFAR. And that was in 2020, right?
Yes.
Soon after learning of that agenda, you were already determined that, we also need to get to that level of partnership with PEPFAR.
We positioned ourselves. we wanted to make sure that we have systems and everything in place for us to be considered for transition.
Yeah, so tell me, step from A up to Z, like when you initiated that process, what did you do for you to be considered? Was it an open call? I mean, how did the transition happen from sub to prime?
Oh, the transition from sub to prime. I think it was a deliberate move by USAID because each of the countries at the local partners meeting would report how many have transitioned into primes. And then there was none from Eswatini before 2020. And there was always the need or the pressure to say 75% of the PEPFAR funds must be managed by the local entities. And so there was pressure even with the local office to open doors for local organizations to become primes. So we did an assessment which was done by PECT, contracted by USAID. And then we also did another assessment which was done by Palladium, which was contracted by USAID to look into organizations in the country that could transition into primes. So in those assessments, we did very well because, as I said, we took it upon ourselves to ensure that everything that is listed in the institutional strengthening plan gets addressed. And literally, once you've done the assessment, they call it the ITOCA assessment with PECT, which looks into the technical aspects, it looks into your programs, how you do programs, how you design and implement. It looks to your governance issues, it looks into your policy environment and everything for the organization. And if you address all those issues that are listed in the institutional strengthening plan, then you stand at a better advantage to transition into a prime. So that mainly that's what we did. We sat down with the team and looked into what we have to do. And we had a very dedicated team that made sure that everything that is listed gets done the way it is required.
I see. So Now that you were a prime for PEPFAR USAID, do you still continue, or well, when you were prime for PEPFAR, because that's in the past now. So how was the Young Heroes Foundation involved or kept working? Were they involved at all or not? Or there were two different entities?
Yeah, so the Young Heroes Foundation in the US is a separate entity from Young Heroes Eswatini.
Oh, yeah.
So there isn't much involvement in the USAID or PEPFAR work that we did. All that they did was to continue supporting the initiatives that they had been supporting before. So they are one of our donors. And then, yeah, when we became prime in 2020, they were happy that we were getting the PEPFAR grant, and yeah, I'd say.
I see. Okay, so now you're the prime partner for USAID. What changed? In terms of responsibility, scope, and all of that, like, did you have sub-recipients that were working under you? So just give us the bird's eye view of that new role as a prime partner.
Okay. Yeah, so when we transitioned in 2020 to be a prime...
2020 or 22? When did you transition?
2020.
2020, okay.
Yes. We transitioned through a fixed amount award. So a fixed amount award is a milestone-based award, which even the payments are based on particular or identified milestones. So I would say it was a safer way of USAID to work with entities that they have not worked with before. Unlike a cost reimbursable or cooperative agreement, a fixed amount award, you would have to perform and achieve certain targets for you to be paid a certain amount. So that's how we started. And then that fixed amount award, Young Heroes again performed very well because we had strengthened our systems in program management, and we had the best performing team in the country, and we implemented and overachieved in the fixed amount award. The project we named Pila Unotse, which means be healthy and financially stable. It was named by the children or the beneficiaries to say, as they engaged with Young Heroes, they felt they are going to be healthy and financially stable.
I see. So, did you have any partners that you were working with as a prime? Is it always the case that when you're a prime, then there's sub-recipients that were working under you as supervising or managing there?
Yeah, when we became prime in 2020, we did not have subs. So the fixed amount award actually does not allow an entity to have sub-implementing partners. So we implemented in 5 of the constituencies in the country. And we continued to do that up until we applied for a call in the year 2022. In 2022 there was a call which we responded to, and maybe tracking a bit backwards, it would be to say the experience of becoming a prime was that we then had to deal directly with USAID. So there wasn't another INGO that was going to help us put things in place so that we were good in what we do. Previously, PEPT would provide the technical assistance so that all that we do would let me okay. So PEPT would provide the assistance so that all that we do is informed by guidance from USAID. And then when we became the prime, we had to read the guidance. We had to understand what it meant, and we had to implement as guided. So there wasn't now another person who was going to support us or give or push us to say do this because it's there in the guidance. So we had to read the guidance. I do recall reading through the TRIMS guidance, which would come now and then to say this is how we do things now. And when things change, there is always some sort of resistance internally with the officers to say, why are we changing this? So the need to explain those to the officers was now Young Heroes' responsibility. And then that happened a lot because when in 2020, you'd recall we had the COVID-19 virus, and it was hectic for us because then we were not going to reach our milestones, and which would mean we were not going to be paid. So we quickly engaged with USAID. We adapted the modalities of implementing our activities. For instance, some of the sessions were delivered through virtual platforms and social media, and we used WhatsApp to communicate to our beneficiaries. And again, during that period, we had, I think it was weekly guidance that we would get from USAID, and we had to be up to date with those. And it was a big step for us to say then we had to deal directly with USAID. And yeah, that was a learning curve for us.
So, who were the local stakeholders that you had to work with? I know that you're saying under the modality in which you were engaged to be a prime recipient, you didn't have SAP. But so, who are your stakeholders? Was it just the beneficiaries that you were mainly working with and PEPFAR? So now that you are also a prime, so how did your relationship with the PEPFAR? I know that you said there's no middleman anymore, you were direct, so maybe you can explain, to what extent were they involved?
Yeah, I would say, fortunately, there were structured meetings and assessments which USAID would do with us, such as the SIMS assessment, which looks into the systems at Young Heroes, and they would monitor that. I think it was twice a year, where they would sit down with the team and assess how we're doing things. And then also USAID had
the authorizing officer representative who would look into the programs and activities for young heroes if they were in line with PEPFAR priorities. And then they also appointed, they had someone who would work directly with us, such as the activity managers. So those would work with the team here at Young Heroes to ensure that whatever we do is in line with PEPFAR priorities. I think that really helped. Besides working and ensuring that we were in line with USAID and PEPFAR priorities, we also worked with nature to ensure that we responded, we contributed to the national strategic framework for the country. We also are taking part in many consortiums in the country, such as technical working groups under the Deputy Prime Minister's office, under the Minister of Education. We work with the government ministries to an extent that with the Minister of Education, we engage with them at all levels, starting from the head office, where we get our initiatives approved. I do recall at some point we were introducing the block grants, where we would have the school identify its needs, and then we would fund those needs to an amount that was equivalent to 3 years worth of school for 20 girls, and would have those identified in Form 1, and then pay so that we know they would go through up to Form 3 without interruptions, because we would have paid for their school fees. Yeah, and then we also work with the Ministry of Tingundla and Regional Administration, and we through which we link with the local authorities, the inner councils, the chiefs, and so that our work in the community is supported by the people or the community members.
Okay, so can you just try to explain to me? So I see that it's different partners that had to play part in what you're doing, as you have mentioned. So can you explain to us how were these like a typical meeting, partnership coordination meetings with the other partners? Who leads them? Who creates the agenda? What's the focus of those kind of meetings?
Yeah, so
technical working groups as well, you mentioned.
Yeah, so the technical working groups are ideally led by the government ministries. Mm-hmm. So there will be a technical working group under the Ministry of Education, where would take part, and all those who are working in that space would report what they do, and they will get guidance in that meeting, and they would participate in any policy development in the country. So mainly the TWGs are led by government ministries, and then Kango would lead what we call the consortiums, where would have the Children's Consortium, for instance, which consisted all organizations registered under Kango that work with children. And we would share our experiences, models of excellence, and standards, create standards of
and procedures for our work.
Okay, so I want to understand the involvement of PEPFAR in what you do. So was it such that you come up with the needs and then you ask for the funds, or there'll be programs that are already designed, pipeline learnings that PEPFAR says this is a good project for meeting the needs of children, as shown from elsewhere or research, therefore this is what you implement? How did that come up? How was the program designed for what that guided what you are doing? Was it coming from PEPFAR, or was it an organic process that came out from your programming and then PEPFAR was funding?
Yeah, so for all the interventions that we did, if, for instance, HIV prevention, the curriculum that we use must be approved by PEPFAR. We would always say it must be approved by OGAC. Mm-hmm. And why? Because in all the work that the organizations that work with PEPFAR do, they want to know what is it that we're doing and how we're doing it. So fortunately for us, we used the curriculum that was used by PACT, and then we transitioned to continue to use that curriculum in our HIV prevention initiatives. So there wasn't much pressure from us to get a PEPFAR approval, because it was the curriculum was already approved. Mm-hmm. Where we are using a curriculum that is already approved in another country, we had to do the adaptations, localize it, and again send it for PEPFAR approval. We did that for our parenting sessions, where we identified a curriculum from an entity in South Africa, and we used the Sinovuyo curriculum and adapted into the Swazi context, and had sent it over to USAID for PEPFAR approval, and it was approved, and we implement it even today.
So I know one of the programs that you implemented, so a specific, you spoke of Pila Unote, Umliba, and then there's Dreams. Mm. So maybe let me talk about Dreams. So how did Dreams start? Did it start in Swaziland? Was it a project that Young Heroes was implementing that went into scale and then other countries to adapt because it was a good lesson? So my question is really around those kind of interventions that went maybe regional, in terms of like, this is a PEPFAR project that you'd find being implemented in different countries.
Yeah, so Dreams came about as a scientifically proven intervention to say we needed to look deeper and have interventions aimed at young girls. Why? Because the HIV prevalence amongst young women, 15 to 24, was very high in the country, and we compared to their male counterparts. So Dreams came to say, as a result of that analysis, to say then we need more interaction with the girls, and Dreams mainly is for adolescent girls. It looks into HIV prevention. It looks into sexual reproductive health. It looks into economic empowerment or strengthening, so that they had the liberty to make choices, because they would be financially independent. It looks into assertiveness, having the girls to be assertive and taking charge of their lives. So dreams actually shifted the focus to say, let us put more focus into what we do with the girls for them to prevent HIV new infections.
Mm-hmm. So it started primarily in Swaziland, or was it in another country?
It's a global, Dreams was a global movement, I would say, because the countries that were implementing the PEPFAR funded programs, they had the Dreams component.
Okay, so now you are prime for PEPFAR. What capacity of funding did you start at when your first grant was prime in 2020? We can always fill in the figures if it doesn't come straight on your head. That's fine.
Yeah, I would have to check, but I think the first grant was around $2 million US.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would have to check. I can't recall now. Yeah, we started. I do. Yeah, I think Pela or not. Yeah, I think it was around $2 million US over 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens to your other programs? Because I recall that you had multiple programs that were running concurrently. Did you continue? Did you stall? And did you continue to get more funding from those programs as you were increasing in scope with PEPFAR funding?
Yeah. So, working as a prime under USAID presented a challenge for us in the sense that then you had to ensure that in terms of programs, financial management and everything for the organization, it was up to standard. And that actually helped us because as we were improving things for the organization, we became more attractive to other donors. So even the other donors, we started seeing increases in the level of engagement. We also started getting other streams of funding. For instance, we had KNH coming on board, which is a German entity. And then along with those, there came the Thomas Engel Foundation, and there came the BMZ, which is the German government Ministry of Economic Planning. And these came to work with us because when they did the assessments, they found that we were a reputable organization in the country to work with. And we got into that space because of the work we were doing with USAID and PEPFAR. And then, yeah, it is always a learning curve, a continuous learning process working with PEPFAR due to the evolving needs on the ground. For instance, there are new trends and developments which then require changes in the way we implement our activities, or sometimes even changes in the approach or the interventions themselves.
So how did your relationship with the other NGOs become after now you became the prime of PEPFAR? Because at some point you were together, but now, you transitioned. So tell us, how did that affect your relationship, either for the good or for negative now that you had transitioned?
Yeah. So I would say our transition into a prime in 2020 really put us out there on the map to say, then other organizations were coming forth to say, or to ask, how did you do it? What have you done? And we have been sharing our journey with many organizations locally as to how we've grown to be a prime, and we have also been identified or seen as the ideal organization if organizations want to develop certain things, policies or governance. They want to attend to governance issues. They would ask or come to us and would share what things we have done. And we also participated now. When you become a prime, then everyone starts looking at what you are doing each and every time. So we would take part in the Congo, which is the coordinating assembly of NGOs here in Eswatini. We would do presentations there, and we were invited, or we were selected to sit in the board of Congo, and our contributions have really gone into sharing what best practices and setting examples for other organizations to pursue.
Definitely. It seems that the impact of that is felt even in the local sphere. On the PEPFAR side of things, I mean, you spoke about activity manager that oversees the day-to-day and supporting what you're doing. What has been the win, the feedback that comes from PEPFAR about your performance and the organization of note that you have become?
I'd say at the implementation level, in terms of program management, I think we really have done very well in that space, such that what we would do mainly with the activity managers under USAID, it would speak to guidance or aligning with the USAID PEPFAR guidance that would have been there at that particular point. Once we have that decided, then in terms of implementation, the team has been very exceptional in that. So mainly our interaction with USAID was on aligning with the guidance at each and a point when there is new guidance that is given.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about reporting. What has been your experience? Because I know that PEPFAR is one program that has been data heavy, and from elsewhere, people that we've spoken to, it's quite a hectic process. So tell us of your experience with the reporting. What did you do to make sure that you were able to report? Because for you to be exceptionally performing, it means that data was coming through. So take us through that journey of data availability, reporting, and from infancy up to a point where you were excelling to showcase the results that you were doing.
Yeah, when working with our beneficiaries, we do most of the interactions through our community cadre. The community cadre are people who we have identified in the communities and we have trained to provide certain services to the children at the household level. So we have home visitors, for instance, who who do home visits on a monthly basis, and they report and they do case management for our OVC. And that is supported by a system which we have on ComCare, we call it ComCare, where there is instant reporting. So as the home visitor is doing the home visit, there is recording of everything that they are doing instantly, and that gets into our systems. So from the office, the officer can check which of the households have been visited and what updates are there on the case management of the children in those households. And then they would then follow up with the community cadre to see to it that in terms of quality of the home visit and the services that are now referred for our beneficiaries get to be delivered. And then from there, we have what we call monitoring visits, where the project officer will now go into meet with the home visitors and do the home visits with them, attending to issues of quality of the services that are given. And then we have an M&E unit which would then look into whether we are moving towards the set targets for our mechanism. That process we would do on a weekly basis. We would review as to if there are issues. For instance, if we look at GBV, we'd look into prevention, what GBV activities have been done for prevention. We would look into a response, what reports have been there on GBV, and follow up and referrals that are done. And that gets to be aggregated to a reporting platform which is managed at PEPFAR level on DATIM, where we would then input data on a quarterly basis to say these are the results for the organization. Those would have gone through internal check check systems, which would involve the project officers would do verifications, and the M&E unit which would also do verifications, spot checks, and do the routine data quality assessments.
It was quite comprehensive. So explain to me, this definitely was different from how you were used to doing reporting before.
Yeah, it was definitely very different in the sense that the reporting for a PEPFAR-funded mechanism is not just reporting to say we have used your money very well, but reporting under PEPFAR is meant to shape strategies, to say in future this is what we do, and we do because of the results that we have reported. Previously, we would report because we want to demonstrate to the donor that we have used the money well. But reporting for PEPFAR is not only for that, it goes beyond that, to say you're also reporting to inform future programming.
So, this was a good lesson, right? The change. Would you say was it something very useful for you as an organization? Yeah.
Yeah, it was very useful, and I think we have now even incorporated that across all our projects.
That was going to be my next question. Did this lesson get to be, transplanted or whatever you call it, like replicated? That's the word in other programs across, because if something is efficient, is effective, then it's bound to to affect how you are now doing your programs and reporting.
Yeah, it has actually shaped the way, reshaped the way we do our reporting as an organization. Because with the other donors, where we would only report to say, oh, we have used your money very well. Now we are able to say, we have used this money very well, and this is what we want to do in future, given what, the lessons that we have learned from the work that we have done. So the engagement is it's sort of on a revolving way, in such that we showcase what next do we want to do there.
I see. So it's inarguable that Young Heroes has grown steadily over the years thus far, and not only just in size and capacity in operations, but also the donor base that has put the organization to an advantage position even within the sphere of development within the country. Like you're sitting now in the board in the coordination assembly of NGOs in the country, and you get to be invited, so you get a preferred spot because of the kind of work and experience that PEPFAR has been able to offer you as an organization. What would you share as learnings for other local NGOs that would want to get to the level at which you have been able to? Obviously, because PEPFAR has been played a very significant role in doing that. What would you share as key learnings for other NGOs? Like, maybe I want to start an NGO and I want to get there. What would you tell me?
I would say, first, you need to get your organizational structure in place. What do I mean by that? For instance, you need to be at your best in terms of governance. You need to be at your best in terms of financial management. And then once you have that, it does give entities that want to work with you the urge to say, I know my money will be used in the right way. And then you move into now excellence in a program implementation. And then from there, it is applying oneself to say, whatever you do, there is always growth. Our growth path is in redefining what we do and finding reasons why we do those. So the first thing is that the organization as a whole, in terms of structure, it has to be at its best. One other important attribute is to ensure that as we hire or engage staff, we get the right people with the right attitude, and people with the required skills and level of competence to implement the programs.
I see. I'd like to just glean a bit of experience as well around working with other partners. Were there any deliberate efforts in terms of your approach to the kind of partners we're working with, like faith-based organizations? Were there any that you worked with or not? And if so, how did you work with them?
In terms of working with other organizations, there are two ways to that. One is through SABs. The award that has just been terminated under USAID, we had 5 implementing partners who were subs under Young Heroes. So as a prime, we were implementing in the Hoho region, and then the Manzini region was fully under implementing partners, the subs. So those we advertised, we made a call, and they applied, put in proposals, and we had a team that did the assessment and selected the implementing partners that we have now. I do recall when we started engaging with USAID, we had double the number of subs who wanted to work with more organizations in the country. And then USAID said no, because we did not have the experience of managing subs before. So we had to reduce by half. So we ended up working with six subs actually, which are 5 implementing partners, and the 6th one was pegged as a technical assistance partner. And then we worked with those, managed those through our grants management unit, which we had set up when we were awarded the cooperative agreement. And then working with the other organizations is mainly through opportunities that we identify at a strategic level, in the sense that we would know which organizations we want to work with, and we would have reasons why we want to work with those. Mainly, reasons would include leveraging on what they already do to support our beneficiaries, or being a resource where we can refer our beneficiaries for more services that we do not offer as Young Heroes. So some of these we have memorandum of understanding with them, which include the Loop Commission, PEPFAR, Baylor, Georgetown University, and many others.
Mm-hmm. So I know that especially for Dreams, it was a gendered type of a program looking at girls and young women. Mm-hmm. So I would be right to assume that gender was influencing how you are designing your programs. Am I correct to assume so, that gender was a thread that was running across, or it was only just with the Dreams that it was a gender-specific intervention?
Yeah, I would say there are initiatives that are specific to say these were doing this for a certain gender, for instance, for girls or for women. Those could be, as I said, they could be informed by trends or studies or observations as to what is really happening in the HIV space in the country. And then it could also be informed by donor priorities. So some of our donors would be specific to say they work with women. So foundations that support initiatives for women only, would not say no to them, but we would fit them into the activities that we do, more especially with our caregivers, which in turn support our children and the youth.
I see. What do I want to say? Okay, like for instance, I know that with these different interventions that you were doing, it was collaborative, working with PEPFAR, and PEPFAR having that particular role. I want us to talk about sustainability. At some point, was there an active agenda that is forward-looking in terms of there might be a time where resources will dry out? Was there something like that? Was there an open discussion? Was there foresight about that, like as you're implementing the different programs with PEPFAR?
Yeah. One of the areas that the PACT assessments looked at was whether the organization had a foresight to the future to say, for instance, if there was over-reliance on one donor, if that one donor pulls out, then what happens? So it also looked at the funding levels and the income streams, and at some point we managed to have no donor giving us more than 50%, but the scales tipped when we got the cooperative agreement, because there was a huge amount from PEPFAR through USAID, which was $20.5 million over 3 years, and that tipped the scales for us to an extent that we could not avoid having one donor giving us more than 50%. Actually, they ended up giving us more than 80% because of the large amounts that all of a sudden became available for Young Heroes to support the children and the youth in the country. So we realized that, and when we engaged early in 2024 with a South African-based entity called Humentum, with which we looked into financial sustainability. First, we received an award from Ford Motor Company, through which we had to select whether we do financial management or financial sustainability. So now when we looked, we did an assessment with Humentum, and they found that in terms of financial management, Young Heroes was good. And then we identified issues with financial sustainability. So we looked into we analyzed Young Heroes businesses and identified stakeholders and came up with a plan for financial sustainability. We had just had the policies or in line with financial sustainability approved by the board in 2024, late 2024, and we were implementing that since then, only to find that actually what we're trying to avoid happens in January 2025. It has been a short time frame for us to really come up with a robust financial management plan, but we had already started. We had already started looking at diversified income. We had started looking at coming up with program income. We had looked into how else can we make money to support our beneficiaries, and we looked into who else do we have to talk to so that we can have several streams of income. So it was fairly new, but the fact that even after the termination of the USAID award, Young Heroes is still there, is that we already had that as we were working with PEPFAR long ago, and we I must say we foresee a future where we are able even to attract new avenues for the organization to survive. We haven't changed our mission in doing that. We still work primarily with children and the youth. All that we are doing is developing programs that would ensure that we respond to the various needs of these beneficiaries, and there is more. I would say there is an opportunity to evolve due to the developments. For instance, there is now the wider use of social networks. There is the wider use of AI. There is a wider use of virtual platforms. So we're looking at exploring all those and to see how best can we reach the youth.
Can you just highlight for me some of the thematic focus areas or activities, interventions that were stipulated in your sustainability plan, which was abruptly, challenged right at infancy?
Yeah, mainly it is around engagement with the stakeholders. It is diversified income to include an increase in unrestricted funds. It does also touch on the need to relook into our strategic plan. So we had just had our draft strategic plan presented to the board when the terminations were effected, and there isn't much that is going to change in the strategy for Young Heroes, because it was not meant for a particular donor, but it is meant for the organization. So the initiatives and the plans that we foresee, for instance, include Young Heroes setting up, being a resource partner in the country, to say in terms of learning and research, we want to get into that space and inform what we do, and also to be a leader, a thought leader in the work with children and the youth in the country.
I think my next question is really something that you've already mentioned, to say that despite the abrupt stalling of projects that happened earlier in the year, Young Heroes still has its doors open. So do you have programs that are running, or we are really at an operational level right now?
We have several programs running. Most of those are programs that are core to the business of young heroes.
Supported outside of PEPFAR.
Supported outside of PEPFAR. We do have projects also that are specific to say it's a project for a particular period, and then that is it. So amongst our programs, we have the support for overseas that we continue to provide, which is supported by individuals, companies locally and abroad, foundations, and the Young Heroes Foundation. When we say we have overseas support initiatives, we have 4 pillars through which we look into the needs of the children. We want to ensure that the children are healthy. We want to ensure that they are safe. We want to ensure that they are educated and they are in stable households. So those are the 4 pillars that we work through. In each of these pillars, then we have quite a number of interventions. For instance, when we say we want to ensure that they are educated, we pay for school fees, we conduct study sessions, we provide school uniforms, and many other education-related components. So in each of the pillars under safety, for instance, we have prevention from violence, we have response for gender-based violence, we have a construction of houses for overseas, and then we have the healthcare component, which ensures that our children are healthy. We work with partners again, where we provide support to children and adolescents living with HIV. We provide support to HIV-exposed infants. Some of these are in the waiver for life-saving activities, which are to be implemented by Young Heroes as a follow-on from the terminated USAID award. So we look at the needs of the children in a holistic way to say, if we do not provide the services, then someone else does, and then we do the referrals. In the Shiseleni region, we have the Litsemba project that looks into children who attend NCPs, ages 0 to 6, and then we provide ECCE, early childhood care and education, to the children in the NCPs. We have 2 mobile clinics that move around the NCPs to do basic health care, immunizations, and we work with the Ministry of Health and also participate in national immunization campaigns. We have interventions that aim at making sure that the children who attend at the neighborhood care points, they have food. So we have been working with WFP with the caregivers of the children at the NCPs to cultivate maize and beans. We are working with the Taiwanese vegetable initiative, where we promote the cultivation of traditional vegetables to add into the meals of the children at the NCPs. So there are quite a number of projects. We have the BMZ funded project, which is on disability inclusion, which has now informed the way we design our interventions. We think of children with disabilities and plan how we want them to participate fully in our interventions.
You mentioned one of the plans for sustainability you engaged in was diversifying, and I'm just wondering about PPP, public-private partnerships. Do you have, how robust is that agenda, and what is the response from the private entities to support young heroes in the country?
Yeah. PPP was actually one of the pillars that I picked up in the local partners meeting in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that there was a need for us to engage meaningfully with the private entities in the country. And I learned of the several opportunities that other countries have, and the limitations we have on here in Eswatini. But to show the importance of that, I made a move and requested that USAID allows us to have a manager in that position. So we have been having a PPP manager outside who would seriously engage with the local entities, with the government structures, and look into how best can we have partnerships to support our initiatives. We have a number of MOUs that have come out of that, and we continue to maintain a number of entities such as MTN to continuously give to young heroes in support of our programs. We have other entities such as the Swaziland Empowerment Limited. We have Standard Bank, we have FNB, we have the MTN Bushfire Festival. So the engagement, again, due to the small size of the country and the few number of entities that you can meaningfully engage, we feel we have been doing very well in terms of getting entities in the country to support our programs.
I see. So there is this discussion globally about global aid and the imbalances that it brings between who brings the purse and the sovereignty of the states in terms of what they can do and not do. Because if you give resources, there has to be conditions that come with that. So, critics have made many concerns about that issue in the African, continent. What's your view in this, or how do you think these questions need to be addressed, or what's the way of meaningfully engaging, allowing supporters at the same time, the state making sure that it does what it's supposed to do?
Yeah. For me, global aid should not aim to reduce the sovereignty of the state. But global aid should aim at strengthening the sovereignty of the state. it should look into what gaps are there that must be attended to. Our approach in terms of planning and programming is that everything that we learn or is brought by a donor, it must be localized. So we look into what activities are we doing, they're informed by what, and then we localize those. So in terms of global aid overtaking the responsibilities of the state, it's a discussion that is constantly ongoing to say, how do we engage the country to say, this is the responsibility of the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini. And again, we have seen the willingness and the positiveness in terms of taking up the initiatives, from learning from the interventions that are funded through global aid. For instance, we have the toll-free line in the country for child protection 116, which was fully funded under USAID, and it was managed by through the USAID grant. But when the funding cuts happened, the government has stepped up to take charge of that line, and they are fully responsible and they manage it. So if it is new things, then it must be new things that can eventually be taken up by the government, such as the toll-free line.
I wanted to actually ask this question, I sort of forgot. So in this sustainability agenda that you have to continue your operations even when a particular donor pulls out, was that an active agenda that PEPFAR was having with you? Did they have a role in that, or any discussion around that issue to make sure that at the back of your minds you're aware that at some point things might happen, and hence that kind of a conversation featuring? Or was it something purely coming out of Young Heroes because you are looking in the future and the possibilities that might happen?
Yeah, so that was purely a Young Heroes initiative. Why? Because we have learned over the years through the PET capacity development initiatives, we've learned that we needed to address financial sustainability issues as an organization. Mm-hmm. The USAID grant did not necessarily look into who else do you work with and what else do you do. Mm-hmm. I think for them it was more like, how best do you do what we have set up to do with you. So to the extent that I think even if we were an entity only implementing the USAID funded activities, they wouldn't mind working with us at that level. But we took the initiative to say, in terms of financial sustainability, what do we do? So that was a Young Heroes initiative rather than a USAID or PEPFAR initiative.
As we're about to wrap up, I just want you to take a moment to reflect on your experience, working with PEPFAR. I mean, how do you feel about it? You've worked with different donors and different projects over a course of different years. What comes into your mind about your experience and that PEPFAR has been able to provide you personally and professionally?
Yeah, working with PEPFAR is not just an eye-opener, it is a learning curve that is at its best. It is an experience that has left us not the same in terms of understanding what we do and why we do it, in terms of the level of engagement, the critical thinking into our programs, and using science and studies as a basis for what we do. It has been such a learning curve for us. And in terms of intellectual growth, again, you get to engage at levels which may not be there before. And at first, it becomes such a challenge, but you get to learn and get used and then and adapt accordingly. It is an experience that leaves one not the same.
I see. So what would you think has been the most important role that PEPFAR has had? Not just, in the lives of the beneficiaries, but what inputs and role that PEPFAR has had, like in the country in general?
Yeah. At some point, I was driving a Young Heroes branded vehicle, and someone gave me way because he saw the Young Heroes brand, and I pulled down the window to say thank you, and he said, "Thank you, Young Heroes, for we know you are doing great work in the communities." This is an area around Mafutseni in the Manzini region where this person just allowed me
Your
way.
preference.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he do that? When I think of it now, the work that we've done with PEPFAR is shaping the lives of the children, shaping the lives of Emaswati. Our work, we primarily work with children, but when you think of it that there is a grandmother or caregiver out there who has the responsibility to take a child to school because that child is an orphan, and then he or she has now to pay for school fees for that child, and then getting the support from Young Heroes to say, now we are helping you take care of this child. Then when you look at the numbers to say in the 2 regions in the country, we had education support for more than 30,000 beneficiaries. When you look into our response to gender-based violence, we were supporting close to 5,000 victims of violence. These are people who would otherwise commit suicide, people who would otherwise have been left with acute health issues should we not have intervened. Because the PEPFAR grant allowed us to follow up on each of the cases, to provide the necessary medical support and even pay for private medical support when needed. It allowed us to prevent new HIV infections among HIV-exposed infants. We had sessions, for instance, with the pregnant mothers who we would work with to ensure that their children are safe and free from HIV. So the interventions that we have done with the children and adolescents living with HIV have ensured that those continue to take their medication as required, and they are indeed life-saving.
That would not have been possible without PEPFAR resources.
That would never have been possible without the PEPFAR resources. And the good thing about it was that we had already started working with our households to say, beyond the PEPFAR-funded programs, how would they sustain themselves? And we were engaging with the caregivers not only on parenting skills but also on economic strengthening. So we got them engaged in savings and lending groups. We got them to have targets as to what targets economically they would want to have. And fortunately, I'd say fortunately, because they would always link those targets with the children. For instance, one would say, I want to be able to pay for school fees next year in January. So that we have seen, and some of the caregivers have really can attest to that. Our engagement with them has really brought in a stability in their households.
My very last question. How do you think PEPFAR has influenced global thinking about public health and global health development in general? Is there a particular shift that you think PEPFAR has contributed in the global arena of global aid and global health? If so, what would you say that is?
Yeah, I really can't imagine what it would be without PEPFAR, because PEPFAR has led the use of science to inform our health interventions and to inform everything that we do in the space of health in the country. I do recall in 2007, back then, there was sort of no guidance, clear guidance as to how do we identify children living with HIV and how do we get them linked to care and treatment. But over the years, PEPFAR have developed those guidelines to say this is what has to happen. So there has been much guidance from PEPFAR to make sense of what we do and to shape what the Ministry of Health actually does in the country. The services that are currently out there have been influenced by PEPFAR. And behind that influence, there is science. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Magongo. As I conclude our interview, I don't know if there's something that you want to say that maybe we didn't touch on, that you want us to include in this remarkable interview that will influence the thinking of future generations, future scholars. Is there anything you want to add? Please go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I think I've said it all, except to add that really I can't imagine how this country, Eswatini, would survive without PEPFAR. I can't imagine where we would be without PEPFAR. I can't imagine what the health sector would be without PEPFAR. It has become this center of excellence with very good results
seeing us achieve 95, 95, 95. It is because of PEPFAR.
Thank you so very much for your time, for your insights, and sharing your life with PEPFAR for the past so many years. We really appreciate your time, and that brings us to the close of our interview.
Thank you.